Well, hello, Liberty listeners. Welcome to another episode of Liberty Road. Today, you guys get to hear from a friend of mine and somebody who you're going to love just as much as I do when this is done. The wonderful Kate Waitzkin. Kate, thank you for being here with us.
Thank you so much, Netta. I'm so happy to be here.
And you do a lot of things. You're sort of a multi-hyphenate within a category. So can you talk to us about, to say that you teach yoga is not enough. To say that you're in the process of authoring a book is not enough. To say that you do retreats is not enough. So explain to us in your own words, what does Kate do?
Yes, of course. Thank you so much. So I am a yoga and meditation teacher. I've been doing that for about 20 years. I started that journey when I was living in New York in my kind of early 20s. And for the bulk of that time teaching, I have taught publicly in studios, taught retreats, as you mentioned, led teacher training programs. And in 2019, I decided to pull way back on teaching publicly, and we can get into that later. But I, within that, opened the Shala, which is my in-home practice studio where I teach small group practices. And just shortly after I opened the Shala, the pandemic started. And so I quickly pivoted, as so many people did, and opened and launched the Shala Online, which is my online platform of offering yoga practices, guided meditations, and other mindfulness programming. So that's sort of the teaching aspect of it. And I will say that my just so it's helpful, hopefully, to the listeners, that my approach to teaching is grounded in the perspective and the personal experience that these practices offer an opportunity for us to step into this sacred space of connection and conversation with ourselves and with that wisdom that is within us that feels really familiar to some of us and feels absolutely foreign to others. I think these practices offer a tool for us to come to know and understand ourselves more intimately, to welcome the fullness of who we are. And my practice and my teaching has always really felt like stepping into a form of ritual for me. So that's the teaching piece. And then the writing piece, writing has been, I'll say, it's been a consistent part of my life since I was quite young. I remember actually sitting in my third grade class with my teacher, Mrs. Sullivan, and I was sitting at my little desk and we were working on a creative writing project. And I wouldn't have described it this way at the time, but I know now, because I still feel this, that when I sit down to write, it feels like a puzzle piece is sort of clicking into place. There's a level of comfort there that I feel. And so writing has always felt like a companion that's kind of traveled through these different phases of my life. And as you mentioned, I'm in the process of putting a book out into the world. I've finished the manuscript, and I'm in the process of finding a team to help me bring that out into the world. So, so that's kind of a snapshot of what I'm doing right now.
And there's so clearly a through line between all of those things. So when I say multi-hyphenate, I think what I'd love for our listener to hear is that there's a way to exercise different parts of who you are within this category or this niche where you can become, something that you love, but you can also become an expert in, right? We don't have to just own one particular spot. In fact, they work in concert with one another. Someone who will eventually pick up your book will learn about Shala Online. Somebody
Right.
who is attending Shala Online will learn about the retreat. Like these things all work together. Um, I want you to go back really quickly to you mentioned that you stepped away from in-person classes.
Hmm.
And this was before the pandemic. You had made that
Yes.
decision. What was that about? What was I don't want to teach one to many
Hmm.
in a physical room. What was that decision about?
So it wasn't so much about what about the studentship and did I want to teach publicly or not. It was really came from an experience that started right around, it was actually right after my 40th birthday. And it was at that time, my kids were, I have three boys, as you know, and my kids were 7 and younger. So that was a very full time just within the family. My husband was traveling a ton for work. And my teaching, I was teaching a full slate of classes and leading teacher training programs, which happened almost always on the weekends. And so, my husband and I were like ships passing in the night, passing the baton. And it was a time when I was starting to really feel, even though I didn't quite have the words for it, but I just was feeling that something needed to shift. I
Mm,
wasn't showing up in the way when I was with my family and my kids that I wanted to, really, really wanted to. And I wasn't, within my work, there was always that kind of that pull that I think so many of us, especially as women, feel in the workplace and at home. And so at that time, we actually decided to move. We left Austin, where we had, our community was, our much of our family was here. It was my hometown. Our kids were established in school here. My career that I had just very thoughtfully built was here, and yet it. I knew that this was the right next step, was to
mm,
move to be closer to my husband's work so we could be, our family unit would be a little bit more intact and we could find that foundation and that footing again. And 3 weeks after we moved, my father passed away.
mm,
And I was very, very close. I still feel very, very close to my dad. And so just within the course of a month, it was, my entire foundation was shaken. It was, we moved, we were in a brand new city, we were in a brand new community. I was finding my way with work. And then my father passes away. And what that year, we ended up being there a year and then came back to Austin. But what that year provided and what it really was for me was a time to grieve in the way that I needed to grieve. And it was an opportunity to just really deeply slow down
mm,
and reflect on how I had been moving through life. And I think of it as a time of refinement, in that it, it was an opportunity, it became an opportunity for me to start to kind of clear away what didn't feel in alignment anymore. And really, what that was just the hustle, the push, the hurrying through life. And so during that time, I became really established in my own personal practice of ritual. It helped me to feel really close to my dad. It helped me to feel deeply grounded and in this space of reflection and awakening to life and awakening to my priorities. And so when we came back to Austin, the Shala truly felt like the next right step. It was not in the grand plan. I didn't have a business plan. It was truly just the next right thing to do.
I appreciate thank you for sharing that intimate story. Um, I appreciate that the decision wasn't black and white, and that the decision came from something that was deeper within, and you had to sort of spend some time to uncover what is it about not returning to that, because that would have been a really easy thing to go back to.
Yes.
You were It was your expertise. You had community as you were coming back to Austin. It would have been easy for you to reconnect
Hmm.
into that space from a yoga studio, from a traditional yoga studio, let's say. Um, and again, I think so many of our listeners who are thinking about what's next, who are thinking about why doesn't this feel right? You've given us sort of permission, if you will, to go within to find that
Mm.
answer, that it's not always black and white. It's not always obvious. And there's not necessarily a bad reason to not continue to do that. The
Right.
reason of, slowing down can feel a little like, well, do I have that luxury? But you were
Hmm.
able to figure it out in a way that was both meaningful for you. And my guess is meaningful for the people that were invited into that much more intimate space because it was in your home. But
Yes.
then
Yes.
COVID hits.
Think of it
And so
as.
you're like, "Damn it.
I
I had a
know.
plan. I had a plan." So what do you need to do? How do you hustle to make that sorry, that was the wrong word because you just
I
decided
know.
not to hustle. But how do you pivot in a meaningful way that you can continue with the hard work that you had done to come to this conclusion, but also do it in a way that matched the circumstances of the day?
Okay. I want to answer that. I would love to go back just for a second to what you were pointing out because it feels really important
Yeah.
around the truth that, and I, when I share that story that I shared, I often have this little bit of a rub because it in a way did feel like a luxury to be able to take that
Mhm.
time. And I know that not everybody has that. Um, and I think that this idea, this practice of slowing down doesn't have to mean you stop everything, you drop everything, you move to a different city and just, go on long walks and
Yeah.
meditate.
Yeah.
It that slowing down can be um, a shift in perspective in the way that we're moving through our days that just allows for a widened perspective that allows for that spacious quality that can come when we just move a little slower, when we take time to sit in stillness in whatever way or form that looks like for you. And so that it just feels important for me to say because I think it's available really to us. It's just knowing and having an awareness of how to do that.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Um, so pivoting, how did I pivot to the Shala Online? Well, what's funny is you can actually go back and look at my library. I think I have over 300 classes on the platform now, at least with yoga classes. And the very first one, my husband Graham was my student. So I was like walking around, circling around him, teaching. That for some reason that seemed like the right way to do it at the time. It's interesting because the idea of teaching in an online space had been in my awareness for a couple of years. There's some really wonderful online platforms that I still use that some of my teachers teach on. And so that was, as I was starting to think about that initially a few years before, that was the direction that I was looking. And so when this happened, and again, it was born out of necessity. I had this space. I had community here in Austin, and I wanted to continue to serve and support and to offer these teachings and to offer and share these practices. And it just made sense. And so there was a huge amount of learning that went into that process. I started on Zoom, leading classes on Zoom, and then realized very quickly that Zoom is not made for that type of class, type of experience. And so it was learning and expanding my website, working with a developer. I mean, it was a huge amount of growth and learning that went into that. Um, so it was a quick pivot, and it's continued to grow, and I've continued to have to learn because everything's always changing, right?
Yeah.
As we know.
It's a really beautiful,
Thank
platform,
you.
I have
Thank
to
you.
say, and, there are times when, we do these digital experiences, classes, courses, whatever they are, and we can feel like we're watching, we're sort of an audience in whatever's happening, and, in your particular experience, and I've only done it once,
Yeah.
I'm excited to do more, but, it feels like I'm actually in the room with you.
Mm,
I'm feeling the space that you've created for us. So, I would encourage
thank
people
you.
to take a look at that, and we'll have all that information in the show notes for everyone. Have you
Thank
enjoyed
you.
the digital space? Has it been I mean, you did it out of necessity. Have you
Hmm.
enjoyed the work?
I have. One of the things I have enjoyed so much about it is it has allowed me to be in contact with and connect with people outside of Austin. International. I have an international membership base, and that's been I never expected that. And it has been such a gift. I have connections with these people now who come and do my online, programming that I offer through the portal, and it's that I would say has probably been the most fulfilling piece. The other aspect of it is that um, it fits into my life in a way that feels really important right now. My kids are at an age where I don't want to miss anything. I don't want to miss a game. I want to be able to go on the field trip. I want to be able to, take yesterday my kid texted me. He's like, "Mom, I forgot my band stuff. Can you bring,
Yeah.
I want to be able to show up in that way for them, and having this online space allows me to do that and to really set my own schedule and rhythm, which is right now feels really important to me.
Yeah, yeah. I wanna ask you something about the digital space because
Yeah.
something that we hear a lot, as women are considering their possibilities and leaning into that future with intention, um, they don't necessarily feel comfortable or equipped in the digital space. How do I
Mhm.
do whatever it is I want to do digitally? Maybe
Yeah.
maybe I missed that boat and and it keeps them from moving forward. Did you know much about what it was gonna take to create a digital platform? And well, answer that first. Were you a techie?
No. No, oh my gosh, not even slightly.
Okay.
I had been on Zoom before. I had a pair of AirPods, and that's about it.
Okay. Okay, great,
That's what I mean.
great.
Well, and I had practiced online. I had been a student in the
Okay.
online space, so I did
So
have
you'd
that.
sort of seen what it could be,
Yes.
but didn't necessarily know how to get there, the A,
Right.
B's, and C's of how to get
Right.
there. So can I ask you, like, I'm not really, but,
Yeah.
let's just pretend. Hypothetically, I'm about to launch some sort of online course. What are the 3 things you think I should do first?
Great question. I would say make sure that you have, sound, as you know, within this podcast world is a big piece of it. So figuring out what type of, sound equipment, well, really sound and visual equipment.
Mhm.
That's a huge piece of it. And it can be as simple as, I mean, I record my classes on my iPhone through Vimeo, and I use my AirPods as my microphone. So it can be super simple. I do
And
have
your
some
stuff
lights
looks
that I use.
beautiful. It looks
Thank you.
beautiful. Yeah.
Thank you. It's again, it doesn't, certainly you can go in that the direction of getting super high quality professional things, but you don't need that. I think that's the biggest thing I would say is to just start.
Mm.
Even if you don't feel like you have all the things that you need, just start, and you can and you will learn as you go on. So really what you need is, you need the platform that you want to, share it through, whether that's your website or a podcast or whatever it may be, a newsletter. And then you need a way to gather the information, so visual and audio. And then from there, you just have to, I would say, take your time to figure it out and be okay with messing up,
Yeah.
which is hard for me, but
Yeah.
it
I
happens.
think it's hard for a lot of people. I'll just say, because this is our audience, it's hard for a lot of women. And if you can shift the idea of perfection for completion, that change that goal, just get it done. Just get out
Yes.
there and get it done. I would also say this is a great time to do that, because in the name of all things authentic, we're much more forgiving, right? We're
Yeah.
much more forgiving now than we were when some of these things first came out and we thought we
Yeah.
had to be so perfect and so professional and polished. Whereas now we're seeing that the more authentic, the more that it's a dimly lit room where somebody's, throwing sweaters on and calling it a
Right.
whatever, a style session. We
Yes.
seem to be we seem to be okay with that. So I think you're right. Just start, and your
Yeah.
audience will tell you what they need. They need more
That's
or
right.
less of, and you'll learn as you go. Thanks for that. I know a lot of
Yeah.
people are thinking about that, so I wanted to get into that with you.
Well, can I add one thing,
Of
Netta, to
course.
that you just mentioned at the end, which is, don't be afraid to ask your audience, questions. I mean, it's very easy. There's a number of different ways to put surveys out, or just simply send an email and
Yeah.
ask, because they will tell you, at least in my experience, they will tell you, what they want and what they need and what they're looking for and how you can support them. And there's a lot there. So
Yeah.
don't be
And
afraid to ask.
I think the outcome can surprise you too. I think sometimes we hold on very tightly to what we think the vision is. And if we hold on somewhat loosely, I'm opening my hands here,
Yeah.
um, then there's the ability for things to morph as needed. And we can be somewhat surprised at where we land. I'll share just an anecdote of something that's been happening with Liberty Road recently. So we had launched our online membership, and it was a way for us to connect you with podcast guests. It was a way for us to connect with experts, authors, from our book club, and also to give you a discount to our events and to welcome you with a welcome box of beautiful products that are often in our goodie bags from our events. And we had lots of people signing up for membership, but we didn't have a lot of people showing up for the online programming. And when
Mm,
we did a survey, we realized what people liked were the coupons and discounts to the events and the other people that we knew, the recommendations I was making, and the welcome box. They loved all the
mm,
goodies in the welcome box. So guess what we did? we okay, we'll pivot. We will create a quarterly offering. Our insiders will be a quarterly offering of cool things that we're introducing women in midlife to. It could be skin and beauty products. It could be wellness products. It could be things like courses. Um,
mm.
and we're in the midst of ordering the new boxes right now so we can make it official. But yeah, listening to what your audience wants and needs, they can do the work for you and save you a lot of
Yes.
time and energy. So I,
Yes.
I appreciate that. Um, let's go back a little bit to the writing, because I had shared with you offline that when we do our big event in the fall, that we often have a breakout session for future authors, and it's
Hmm.
always filled up. And so I wanted to ask you a little bit about that process. First, what made you want to write a book, and what's the general thesis of the manuscript you've just finished?
Yeah. Thank you for asking. So, um, what made me want to write a book, uh, as I mentioned before, writing really has been something that has felt in a sense like a refuge, a place, a nest of creativity and comfort for me, whether it was growing up and writing in my journals or, as I got older, taking these creative writing classes, journalism classes. I graduated from the communications school here in Austin at UT. So I got exposed to a lot of interesting courses there and in that world. And I think that as at least as a young adult, always knew and hoped that a book would be in my future, but I never really knew what that would look like. And it was it was this sort of moment of feeling like, oh, okay, I actually have something that I feel like I can contribute to the world right now. And so the book itself it's a nonfiction book that is based in and rooted in the teachings of yoga and meditation and mindfulness. And it explores the concept of ritual, which you've heard me mention ritual a
Mm,
few times already. And ritual, not just as in the traditional sense that we often think of as performing an act or a ceremony of sorts, but seeking to broaden and widen the lens on ritual to see it as potentially a way of seeing and a way of being in the world. And so it's what I offer is that ritual can be this tool to awaken more fully to the life that's in front of us and to navigate our human experience, the emotions and the experiences that we collectively um, go through. And so the book itself is a collection of personal story and lived experience through essay and poetry. And it also includes practical, curated practices to support the reader, again, through these kind of moments in life. So that's the book.
I can't wait until we all can get it into our hands. Um,
Thank you.
Writing it and the comfort and the meaning that it gives to you is one thing, right? Now you got to
Yeah.
get it into the hands of the peeps,
Right.
right? You got to get it into those readers, not just into their hands, but just in their kind of view, right? So that they
Yes.
know that
Yes.
it's available. What's that process been like, and how have you anticipated the next part of being and becoming an author, a published author?
Mm.
Because you're already an author.
Thank you for saying that.
Mhm.
I still do have, I think I've said this to you before, but I still do have a hard time claiming that. But I'm getting more comfortable with it. And, it in much the same way that shifting into the online space with my teaching, there was a huge learning curve there for me. That has also been true about the book writing process, and not just this space where I am now, which is looking for a team to help usher this into the world, an agent and an editor, but actually the writing process itself. It's one thing to have an idea, a
Mm.
concept, a seed of an idea, and it's another to write an entire book. And I will say that for me, has been one of the most challenging, even though I love it, challenging, and also fulfilling experiences of my life. And learning the literary world and how that turns and how it churns and how it works it's been learning a new language of sorts. And I still have so far to go there. I was introduced a few years ago to a woman who is now my writing coach. Her name is Suzanne Kingsbury. I cannot recommend her enough as a resource for any of your listeners in the community who are, interested in this journey. But she offers a program called the Gateless Writing Academy, and it's a 10-month postgraduate program designed for people who either have a book idea or
Mm.
already have, a memoir or not a memoir, a manuscript in the works. And I learned so much in that process. It dropped me into a place of a community of writers. It got me writing consistently, almost on a daily basis. It built my confidence and my courage and my trust in my writing. It's just so I would say, finding a community, whether it's one person that you trade your writing with, or it's a group of people that you sit and just spend time talking about the process or writing together, that can be such a huge form of support on the journey.
Well, we will for sure include her in our show notes. And is her program good for both fiction and nonfiction, or is it
Yes.
spoke? Okay, it is.
Yep.
Okay, that's good
Yeah.
to know. Thank you for sharing that,
Yes.
that tip with us, that resource. But what about, everything we're hearing from publishers now that it's like, unless you have a platform, we're not really interested because our business is to sell
Yeah.
books. How have you dealt with that? And you have a platform.
Well, I thank you. I do. But and it's I've definitely run into that. I have run into that. Some of the publishers, agents specifically, are very clear and explicit about not accepting, seeking authors who have an established large platform. And then I have had a few responses that say, we need you to have a bigger platform. And so, like, we love the book,
Right.
and this is what we need. So it's hard. I think it's just part of the world that we live in right now. And there's one approach, I think, which could be that you step back and take time and try to build that platform. The other approach, which is where I am right now, is just to continue to trust that I'm going to find the right spot
Yeah.
for it. And there are so many different ways to get a book into the world. And I've just sort of started that exploration into one of those paths. So I know it'll get out there. It's just a matter of when and how.
Yeah, and I think we as readers need to be careful that we're not just consuming everything that's given to us via these big publishing houses just based on platform size, right?
Right,
That
right.
we need to be sort of demanding the independent voices that
Mm,
can come through, so that we can have the fullness of other people's experiences to impact our own. Right? That's what we
yes,
need. That's what we need
yes.
in these books. That's what we need in your book. Um,
Thank you.
and I want to ask you a little bit about as you, how old were you when you launched the Shala? And I mean, it was only 3 weeks later that we went into the pandemic. So that
Yes,
whole
I
thing.
was, let's see, I was 42, I believe, at the time. I'm 47 now. So yeah,
Okay.
I think it was about 5 years ago. Yeah.
What has age um, offered you in terms of your ability to pivot, to hold on loosely, in that case, to circumstances changing? Um, In terms of even hearing feedback from publishers that you need to go build a platform that's bigger, and you're like, actually, I'm gonna find a different publisher, right?
Mm,
Thank you, but no
mm-hmm.
thank you. Um,
Yeah.
what has age and and wisdom, and those things aren't synonymous unless we accept the wisdom part, right? You
Yes.
have to grow into it. You don't just get to call yourself wise because you've lived a few years. Um,
Yeah.
so what has it offered you in terms of accepting those things and also taking on some of those challenges?
That's a great question. I think what's coming up for me as you're asking that is just just like you said, that age the number, the way that we identify ourselves, with a number is really only, I believe, holds the meaning that we give it.
Mm.
And so there is, we can choose to charge it with love and gratitude and trust and opportunity and potential, or we can charge it with fear. And I think that I have lived a lot of my life in a space of really what the underlying thing is fear, which I think is true for a lot of people when we really get down to our choices and the perspectives and the way that we view ourselves and the way that we talk to ourselves. And so I would say that not specifically the age, but really just the years lived and the experiences that I've had um, have given me, and the work that I've done on myself have given me um, the perspective and the knowing that I can trust the process and trust that whatever it is that I'm putting out into the world that I feel inspired to share with the world will land for someone, the person or the people that need it in that moment. And also just to remember that the world is really big
Mm.
and we don't have to, not everybody's going to like what we write, not everybody's going to like the way that we teach, not everybody's going to like our voice, and that's okay. And that's important to have that diversity. And so just knowing that there is and believing that there is that there are people out there who are looking for and really need what it is that you're offering or that I'm offering
Yeah.
is a piece of it.
100%. In
Yeah.
fact, I think the more, how do I say this in a way that doesn't sound negative? The
Yeah.
more we can build an audience that is 100% along our journey, the journey that we've created, the more likely we will create others who are not, right? If you're
Mm-hmm.
so good at being for something, you're going to have people that are not for that thing.
Yes.
And I
Yes.
think that's actually a sign of doing a good job at
Yeah.
bringing up what you authentically have to offer, bringing up a new point of view, a new perspective, a new way of looking at things. And for those other people, there will be other voices. Um,
Mm-hmm.
no one, I don't want anyone to walk into something I've created and just say, well, that was lovely. I want
Right.
them to walk in and say, oh my gosh, that was powerful, or that had an impact, or that changed the way I view X, Y, and Z. Or, you know what, it's not for me. And I'd much
Mm-hmm.
rather that than, oh, that was lovely.
Yes, absolutely. And that's reminding me of an experience that I had right as I was finishing my manuscript and my proposal. This past summer, and my kids were away at camp, and my husband and I were in Marfa, Texas, which is a place that we go sometimes for work and often just to sort of turn the dials down on life. It's a beautifully quiet space, and I was literally coming to sort of the final pages of writing finishing my manuscript, and instead of feeling this, what I had imagined would be this sort of elation of like, oh my God, I've finally done this. I felt this huge wave of anxiety come through me and come over me. And when I sat with that and I talked with my husband about it and just spent some time with it, what I realized was that I was feeling that way because it meant that I was that much closer to putting this work out into the world and to uh, being in a place where, if I'm looking at it from the fear side of things, I'm exposing myself, right? And that was terrifying. And, there was something that you said that made me think of this, that it was about letting go of that control. And my
Mm,
husband actually said this to me. It was just such a wise thing. He said, you've done the work and now you just have to let the waters carry you where you're going to go. And to me, that meant I've got to just let go of the control because,
mhm.
as we've just said, it's, I can't I can't control how people will receive what I'm offering, and I also have to trust that there are people who will receive it with open arms and a big open heart, and it will serve them in the way that I hope it will.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think if we do the work and we show up, then we can have faith that there will be others who can receive that work.
Yeah.
Um, I know that to be true. In your case, in particular, having spent time with you and interviewed you on other occasions, what you are authentically creating for other people is just a space for them to feel seen and known. I think it's also a space for them to be able to see and know themselves. You've done something
Mm,
very unique in that way. So I know
thank
that the book will be an extension of that. So I can't believe our time is coming to a close, but I have to ask
you.
you this one last question. As you know, everything we do here is this idea of how do we liberate this
Mm,
this thing within us, this calling, this love, this purpose, this meaning. And I would love to know, in all the work that you're doing as a yoga and meditation teacher, as somebody who's creating retreats for other people, as somebody who is um, putting her words and her thoughts and her ideas out into the world as an author, what is it that those things have done to liberate you, the woman?
mm. I would say that all of this work and these practices and these teachings, and even the deep waves of grief that I've lived through, and so many of us have. For me, I think it is that I've learned and come to trust and know, really, really know that it's possible to feel deep ease in my body and in my mind. It's possible to feel settled and at home, and it also takes a daily practice. It takes a consistent practice of being willing to orient towards ourselves and orient towards that space of quiet and listening. And that can look a lot of different ways. It doesn't have to look like sitting on a meditation cushion every day, but to just know that that's possible and really trust and feel that in my body and in my mind is has been such a huge gift of this practice, and it's why I continue to teach. And it's my prayer is that we can all feel that and know that and experience that. Um, and it's. I would also just say that um, I've learned from all of this that life is fragile and
Mm.
life is precious, and our that we have a choice in where we place our energy. We have a choice in where we place our attention. These practices have taught me that, and so my hope is that I'm choosing that wisely every day, and that we all are doing that in a way and choosing in a way that supports us and supports those around us in the world.
It's amazing when I hear people answer this particular question that the thing that is liberating to them is liberating to other people.
Mm,
And yours is no exception. Thank you for sharing the work that you're putting out into the world, the way you've been able to put it out. I know that so many who are listening will be jotting down notes and no doubt going in and checking out that the writers class for sure,
yes.
and some of the tools and tricks that you utilize to launch your own platform. So thank you, Kate. I really appreciate you.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to be here, and I love this Liberty Road community. And just, yeah, thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. And Liberty listeners, thank you guys for hanging out with Kate and with me. And we will talk to you again very soon. Bye for now.